Hey everyone, how do you justify tying your survival, your health, even your prosperity directly to someone else's sacrifice? Now, that is the question that sits right at the center of They Will Kill You, the new film that kind of asks bluntly this question with a wink and a nod. But don't be deceived, it is not interested in letting you off the hook. It wants an answer. This is not just a horror film built around a supernatural bargain with a demon. It is a story about choice and its immediate and cumulative costs over time, along with consequences we would rather not examine too closely. There's also this subtle mythological layer beneath all of this, one that quietly echoes the Divine Comedy without calling attention to itself, framing this bargain as part of a larger moral system operating within the Virgil. The film introduces the simple premise of trading one's life for another. It feels familiar at first, like a story you already understand. Yet the longer you sit with it, the more that simplicity begins to fall apart. What initially looks like a clean transaction reveals itself to be far more complicated, pushing beyond a simple question of right and wrong. This film has problems, but when it gets right, it really does get right. The story follows Asia, a woman trying to rebuild her life after prison by searching for her missing younger sister, Maria. She eventually tracks her sister to the Virgil, this wealthy New York residence where people seem to fall out of society and just disappear. Asia is determined to find Maria and to reclaim their relationship, but things are not as they seem, and her sister is no longer that little girl that she left behind. It's an emotional premise set against this absurd backdrop that is just heightened to the point of, I don't know, comedic goofiness at times. The film really leans into an campy, over the top tone that blends action and horror throughout and really exaggerated and highly stylized violence that often defies physics while keeping the story's internal logic deliberately loose. You will inevitably find yourself asking really practical questions about how this place functions and how the system within the Virgil sustains itself. But those questions are almost beside the point. The film raises them, then moves on without answering them at all. At times, They Will Kill You intentionally feels corny and action packed, as if it exists somewhere between The Heretic, Tropic Thunder, and Kill Bill. The heightened action and campy practical effects make it feel a lot closer to older horror traditions with these bright bursts of stylized blood that's red and just gushing out, and the body horror that just kind of push against the boundaries of modern genre expectations. The Virgil as an environment embraces an ornate Art Deco aesthetic that feels frozen in time. It gives you just enough distance from the world on screen to question what you are seeing rather than simply reacting to it. This is not a film that depends on star power. To carry its weight, I made a conscious decision not to look up the cast, not to look up the director or the writer. Their identities have absolutely no bearing on how I interpreted this story. And that distance it allows me to meet this film on its own terms. At first glance, it kind of plays with that slightly campy horror from the 80s and 90s. There's really strong action almost right from the start. There's a rising tension that kind of pits everybody against each other. And there's this clear sense of danger that's tied to the rules that seem really easy to understand at first. That accessibility invites you to kind of settle in and assume that you know where this story is headed, but you don't, or at least not in the way that you expect. Instead of expanding outward into a detailed mythology, the film kind of turns inward. It becomes less interested in explaining to us how this world works and more focused on Asia's experience, understanding and moving through it. Even the name Virgil feels like a mythological clue that the film offers up without any explanation, while hinting at a deeper structure that's kind of implied but never quite defined. The choice gives this film its identity, even as it leaves parts of the world building incomplete at best. What stays with you after the film ends is not the action or the mechanics of the world, even if they remain some of the film's biggest flaws. Instead, what lingers is the film's central question. Who are you willing to continuously sacrifice for your own survival? That question, it carries weight because it touches something deeply human inside of us. It also introduces the bargain with the demon as a metaphor for the choices that we make every single day as we chase success or grasp onto the fraying edges of our own survival. Success really requires trade-offs. What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve your goals? What does the cost benefit analysis actually look like when the trade-offs are rarely neutral? Someone benefits and someone pays that price. The film never makes it clear whether one sacrifice is enough or if the Virgil system really demands additional sacrifices from each resident over time. What is clear is that the cost for immortality does not feel finite and additional payments are required. But how that all works, it really doesn't get into. That's what They Will Kill You is all about. It dresses up that idea in a campy horror action flick that's full of comedy, and then it puts a black girl boss as the central character, and that choice feels intentional because Asia is not just set up as the hero of the story. She's also set up as the sacrifice, and there's a deeper meaning there. The film deepens that idea through characters who have lived with this system for years. Over time, their justifications begin to erode, and what once felt acceptable becomes harder to ignore. This is about making a choice and the cost of living with it over time, as well as who you are willing to sacrifice. Ray, the old man who tries to help Asia, makes that shift explicit. When the system operating within the Virgil first began operating, the sacrifices were basically bad people who the residents could just easily justify choosing. As time passed, those bad people became harder for the residents to find. So they began taking pretty much anyone they could lure into the building. They stopped asking who these people were and what their choice to sacrifice this person or these people really meant. Their decisions did not stay neutral. Instead, their choices moved the residents from good to morally gray to something much darker. That transition and the cost of the choices that were made over time is part of kind of that underlying, I don't know, rationalization of how we make choices that we know are not good choices, but we need to justify anyway. The residents of the Virgil begin to feel like an extension of our private, dirty little secrets. We justify our choices, telling ourselves what we gained was worth it. We avoid looking too closely at who paid that price, because if we did look, we would have to confront what our choices actually say about us. There is another layer to the film that it never states directly, but builds into the structure kind of explicitly in all these other little ways. The building is called the Virgil, which immediately evokes the Divine Comedy. In that story, Virgil leads Dante through hell, helping him to understand its structure and its meaning. The parallels begin to emerge once you notice them. The Virgil is organized into these nine floors, loosely reflecting the nine circles of hell. The film never maps this structure out clearly, but it provides enough clues to recognize the pattern. Moments like Asia having to pass through the second floor's so-called Room is an obvious nod to Dante's progression from the first level into the second level of hell, which is based on lust. Asia's journey mirrors Dante's in this structure. Like him, she can't escape from any single level. The exits are all sealed, the windows, they're reinforced, and there is simply no way to get out from any individual floor in this building. The only way out is to move through the building, floor by floor, until she reaches the roof and finds a way down through the outside fire escape. This aligns closely with Dante's journey. In the Divine Comedy, the way out of hell is not to defeat it, but to understand it and to move through it. That is where Ray's role becomes essential because he lives within the system. Like Virgil helping Dante, Ray chooses to help Asia. However, while he can guide her, he can't save her. She's got to do that for herself. Even the hierarchy within the building reflects hell structure. Lily controls access and movement between floors, acting as Asia's gatekeeper within the system. At the center of it all is the bargain with the demon, and the residents are the physical force pushing and pulling Asia toward the heart of the building and her moment of sacrifice. The movie never ever explains this outright. It trusts you to kind of get it or not. It doesn't really care. If you are looking for a fully explained mythology, the film will leave you feeling incomplete because honestly, I don't think it cares whether you get it or not. That's not the point that it's trying to make. What works best in They Will Kill You is the film's willingness to sit in its own discomfort. The film knows what it is and it doesn't worry about presenting itself as a polished piece of cinematic art because it's not. Instead, the movie shrugs off any need to explain itself and lets its ideas linger with you long after it ends. The campy tone reinforces that choice a whole lot, keeping the film from taking itself too seriously, almost to the point of absurdity, and removes any pressure to explain its purpose or its mythological undercurrents. The exaggerated action and practical effects are as low budget as they come. They kind of look like high school they do actually kind of look like high school effects, but that simplicity works in the film's favor to a large degree because of the action that's playing out on screen. It feels kind of like a return to basics for good or ill. At the same time, the internal logic is inconsistent, and that inconsistency is amplified by the story's obvious disinterest in explaining itself. It doesn't care. That creates gaps in how the system operates and how the world functions. They, those gaps can easily pull you out of that experience, especially when you start asking some of those larger logistical questions that the film really has no intention of answering. In those moments, you have to decide whether to stay with the story or let those gaps just pull you out of it. Some of the biggest issues from this film really focus on the exaggerated action, which occasionally stretches the film's credibility just a little bit too far. And I mean, the action is fun and it's campy and it's there, but it also creates these additional problems during a few of the scenes that have some really uneven performances. I mean, I don't know if the acting isn't good or if it's just this weird campiness that the film is going after, but it's really obvious that there's a real unevenness to the whole thing. Even in dark comedies that lean into absurdity like this, the illusion breaks if you start to feel like the actors are becoming aware of the story. And there are a few moments when it feels a little too obvious. It feels like the actors are kind of aware of us watching them. And while none of these issues kind of ruin the film completely, because the tone makes it obvious that the film is not serious stylized horror. It's just a wacky, somewhat modern horror that is meant to get you thinking about some deeper philosophical issues that it never carries home. So, with all the good and bad in this film, is They Will Kill You ticket worthy? It really depends on what you want out of the movie. If you are able to just kind of roll with the film's punches and enjoy it for the campy horror that it is, and you don't mind spending the money on a theatrical ticket, it's probably worth seeing. However, this movie is absolutely not for everyone. People are going to feel vaguely dissatisfied or really dissatisfied with most of the movie as a whole. But while the film does do some interesting things, it just doesn't stick the landing. If you don't like horror and you prefer tightly constructed worlds with clear rules and films that follow their own rules, this film is likely to fall short for you. Let me know what you think of They Will Kill You. Did it work for you? Did you like it? Is it an interesting enough concept to get you into the theater, or will you be waiting for this one on streaming? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're here, please do give this review a thumbs up and subscribe if this helped. And hey, why not check out one of these other reviews? I'll see y'all again soon. In the meantime, happy viewing. Bye for now.